Okay, hello everyone. So today we're gonna talk about the ethical challenges of BCI. Before we start our lecture, I'd like to uh, have some updates on our course schedule. So uh, I'm sorry for keep changing the schedule because our invite, our invited speaker, because our invited speaker has changed the schedule. Uh, oh, sorry about that. So, Professor John has changed the invited talk to May 20th. So let me change this one. And that will push the final presentation to May 27th. And this will allows everyone to have more time to work before the presentation. And today we will announce the uh, detailed plan of the final project. So later we will have some time to go through the documents describing what you have to do in the final project. Okay, so well, this is not updated on the E3, so I'm gonna update it now. So, any question about the course schedule? Okay, so let me explain again. So today we are here at May 6th, and today we're gonna announce the final project. Uh, so this week and next week we will discuss about the ethical issues in BCI, and you will have some chance to discuss with your group members. And since there's a lot of open questions in the ethical issues, so uh, I will I hope that in our class we can share our thoughts about the about the future applications of BCI. And this is the invited talk. And the May 20th will be the invited talk. And in the talk, you will have a chance to submit a talk review, and that will be about 500 words or so. And that's optional. So if you submit the talk review, uh, you will have uh, you will get like bonus credit for that. But that's not part of the participation. That will be included in your homework and assignment. And the final presentation, we will have group presentations. So you you will present by groups, and we will have evaluations across group and across the group. So you will be assessed by me and the TAs and other groups. And after that, you will have to submit a project report that will due on June 3rd. Okay, and we will have no class on June 3rd, so it's just the deadline of your project report. Okay, I hope this is clear. If it's not clear enough, please let me know. And meanwhile, I would like to ask the TA to post the documents of the final project. Okay. And another thing is, since we're gonna have some group discussion in this lecture and the next week lecture, I want to ask each group to set up a Google Meet as a breakout 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 meeting, uh, which means each group needs to set up a Google Meet and share the link here so that I can I can join. Uh, so I think I'll assign someone in a group to do this. So each group there's a member in our research group. So in the group one, there's Yanming, Guan Yanming, and group two there is Zhou Jinlun, and group three is Chen Songyu, and group four is Pan Yueting, group five is Zhang Liren, and group six is Chen Xian. So I hope so. So for the six people, please set up the Google Meet for your group and post the link here. Okay. All right. So let me update the course schedule. Okay. So uh, BCI is a technology that's still developing. However, there are clinical applications in BCI that's been moving faster because there are patients who need this technology to improve their life quality. So compared to the applications in the real world for everyone, um, it has a higher demand from the patients to apply BCI in practical use. So there are roughly two categories distinguishing the clinical applications of BCI. One type of the applications is a technological alternative for users' loss function and can be considered a form of assistive technology. So this in short is like a prosthesis. It's a prosthesis to replace part of your body that was and to complement its loss function. For example, if you are paralyzed, that means you can now walk. Um, then you can have some neuroprosthesis or even exoskeleton that's been controlled by BCI to function as the lost part. And the other way of clinical applications is rehabilitation purpose. So if you remember, in the early lectures, we go through the BCI applications of rehabilitation, where there's a stroke patient who lost the motor function, and in the video we saw that they have BCI experiments for the patients to do rehabilitation training, where the patients use the motor injury BCI to control the muscle stimulation of the arm that he couldn't control. And when he focused hard enough on moving this arm, that will trigger a command for the muscle stimulation to move the arm. Okay. By the way, I still cannot see the breakout session link for each group. So for the six people, I ask for help. Please post your group breakout Google Meeting link in the chatting box. Okay, so I'll go on. So one type is to uh, replace your lost part or your lost function, and the other type is to recover your brain function. That means your brain has gone through some injuries, so part of your brain is lost, and there's a process of recovery using some rehabilitation training with BCI to optimize the recovery process. Okay, so there are invasive and non-invasive BCI being applied to clinical applications. One most common non-invasive EEG BCI for clinical application is the P300 speller. P300 speller is that there's a matrix of letters showing on the screen, and the patient is usually paralyzed, but uh, the patient still have the functions to move the eyeball to look at the visual stimuli, so that patient can use the P300 speller to type the letter and to communicate with others.好，那今天我们要讲的是这个 BCI 的伦理议题。那首先呢，我们要来看一下，就是 BCI 在实际应用上，它有分成一些不同类别。那有一种是临床的应用，那相较于这种一般生活上我们会用到的、想象得到的 BCI 应用来比较的话，临床的应用它是发展的会比较快，是因为临床的病人他们有非常直接的需求，是非常具体直接的需求，希望可以用 BCI 来改善他的生活品质。那通常就是他们是可能真的有需要，那这个 BCI 的用途就会大概分成两种。那有一种 BCI 在临床的用途，它就是去取代你身体缺失的某个部分，或是某个功能。那比如说你的下半身不能走，你可能瘫痪了，那 BCI 可以让你去控制一个义肢或者是外骨骼，然后让你可以行走。那另一种呢，就是我们也看过，就是把 BCI 用在复健上面就是通常就是在那个大脑有损伤的病人上，那通常就是因为中风。那我们有看过一个影片，就是中风的病人，他的手臂不能动， 那但是他的手臂有接一些肌肉刺激，所以他就用 BCI 去想象他要动这只手，然后他足够专注的时候呢，他就会启动一个指令，让这些肌肉刺激去让他的手动，啊，形成这样一个主动的臂回路的呃手的那个手臂的控制。那这样子是一个可以帮助他的大脑复健的过程的一个方式。好，所以一种就是用来去取代你身体缺失的部分，那另一种就是去帮助你的大脑复健，那去帮助你大脑受损的部位去复原。那临床应用上的脑机界面有分侵入式，也有分非侵入式的。那其中一种常见的非侵入式的脑机界面，用在临床上呢，就是叫 P300的打字的装置，输入的装置。那它可以让你输入不同的字母，这个就可以让那个瘫痪的病人可以跟外界沟通。那像这些病人，比如说可能是渐冻症，那他最后可能剩下眼球可以动，那他用眼睛去看着这个荧幕的界面显示的视觉刺激，他就可以用 P300这种 BCI 去输入字母。OK，那也有侵入式的，它就可以侵入式的它可能就可以比较顺畅的去控制机械手臂或者是单纯就是荧幕的游标就可以了。Okay, so in non-invasive BCI, for the patients, uh, the most common way is the P300 speller for the patients to type the message. And for invasive for invasive BCI interface for the patients, there are some motor control for the patients to control the cursor or a robotic arm or just process or neural processors. So here, let's check out this video to see a demo of clinical trial of BCI. That would be this one. Okay, so this is brought from the BrainGate. BrainGate, if you remember, they are the group developing demo. They show the demo of the paralyzed patient using robotic arm to grab the drink. Okay, so this is a team led by Dr. Leigh Hochberg, who's a professor in Brown University as well as in Massachusetts General Hospital. And their group, this is a demo of their group using the motor control BCI for advanced ALS patients. Okay.
Now, I'm going to see if I can just pause this video for a moment. I'm going to jump right to show you the very first participant with ALS who was in our clinical trial. And, so I'm jumping back to 2006. We see his chest there. You'll see the computer screen in just a moment. I'll press play again, and you see our research technician there, Abe Kaplan, who's telling him for the first time, telling a participant for the first time what he should be trying to do, which is trying to move his hand. I will tell you that the incredible gentleman who was in this trial was in his 30s, had advanced ALS. He was mechanically ventilated. He was unable to use his hands with an occasion.
So can you all see the video clear and hear the voice clear? Just want to check. Okay, good. Thank you.
Flicker remaining of 2 fingers on his right hand. He also had limited eye movement, but with that eye movement, he was able to use either another technology or to type out, if you will, letters. showing us not only his incredible sense of humor, but his real deep understanding of the research and desire to help other people with ALS and other forms of paralysis. So as I press play, he's being asked for the very first time to try to move that little white cursor on the computer screen and to move it to the orange square. And I purposely don't have the sound going at the moment so that you can hear me, but you may have seen Abe, our research engineer, there smile, kind of looking around behind him, because even before the instruction to move that cursor was fully spoken, our incredible participant was thinking about moving his own hand. We were decoding the brain activity, and he was moving, albeit in a wobbly manner, but kind of right out of the box, if you will, that cursor around the screen to get to what were the big targets. That told us something really important from the standpoint of ALS, because there was a question, maybe that's a question that may be asked, why would we record from the motor cortex from somebody who has advanced ALS? Because there are some people that were under the impression that because ALS can injure the motor cortex, that we wouldn't get any useful recordings. The good news is that our experience thus far has been that there's lots of useful, harnessable, that's a word, activity in the motor cortex that we can allow people with ALS to use to control an external device. You're now...
So he just mentioned that even ALS patients still have some functioning neural activity in the motor cortex, so they're able to record the information from motor cortex to do the controlling.
Having the perspective of one of the users of BrainGate system in our trial, he's looking at the computer screen. This is somebody, again, with ALS, and he has neural control, that is intended motion control of that cursor on the screen, and he's moving it to the red dot. This is a video game, and when he gets there, he's supposed to click. So for the movement is an intended movement of his hand, as though he had his hand on a computer mouse, and when he got to the target of interest, it was a click. A few things to point out about this one.
So this is more like a calibration session for the patients to practice controlling the cursor to touch the target. 好，那这个他们对这个渐冻人，他们依然是可以从这个动作皮质去找到一些动作相关的讯息。那这些讯息就可以用来做这个游标的控制。那这边应该像是一个校正的一个界面，那是让那个病人去练习怎么样怎么样控制这个游标去碰到这些目标物。
One is that compared to the first video that I showed you, which was from our first participant, to the one I just showed you now, the control of the computer cursor has substantially improved since then, which is the result of the ongoing research to improve that black box, to improve the math, to improve the decoding ability of signals from the nervous system being used, from the brain being used to control an external device. So smoother, faster, more accurate. The other thing to point out is the background, which is that we're in his living room, his paintings, his couch. So this research really does occur at home. Ask why are we doing this in people's homes as opposed to the university laboratory, which is where research usually happens. The answer is pretty simple, which is that a medical device needs to work not in the university laboratory, it needs to work where people live. And since the beginning of this research, we've been conducting it with the help of extraordinary participants who have allowed us into their homes to work with them for a year or more. And computer.
Okay. So let's just fast forward to the interface that they use for the ALS patients.
When I press play here, there's going to be somebody who, also somebody with ALS, who's looking at the computer screen that we're looking at. We can focus on this one here. There's another example of somebody else with ALS.
If you can do cursor control, you can certainly do the typing using this interface.
The upper right-hand corner using a different type of computer interface. Here, there's kind of a funny-looking keyboard. It's actually an optimized keyboard, where most commonly used letters in the American English alphabet, at least, are right down the center. And here, one of our participants with ALS is pointing and clicking to type the phrase that you see at the top of the computer screen. And as shown on the left, she and others in the trial were able to achieve up to 39 correct characters per minute just by typing, and that's without any word prediction. One of the reasons that we're working on a system that records from inside the brain is that we believe, and so far it seems to be, that those information-rich signals can provide much faster methods of communication than other approaches. Of course, other approaches may not require or do not require neurosurgery, and that's an important balance. But when we saw this speed of typing, we began to think to ourselves, well, this is pretty good point and click control. It's pretty fast and it's pretty accurate. Why are we, as a group of clinicians and scientists, why are we developing communication interfaces? Why don't we switch to using communication interfaces?
Okay, so we just saw that there's a very smooth controlling of typing from the patients, and this is a more demo that they use this BCI to control like the whole tablet as normal
um,
people.
that are, if you will, professionally made. That is, researchers, the gentleman on the right, that's YouTube, and he
And so this patient can watch YouTube,
just did a search
and this lady is typing email.
for ALS. So back to the beginning when I said one of our hopes and one of our goals is to be able to tell somebody with ALS that they will never lose the ability to communicate. We'll always maintain progress on the way. And the brain activity.
And since the motor information decoding is quite uh, promising, so they can even reconstruct the handwriting from the patient's motor cortex with very good accuracy.
As one of our participants here, a gentleman with cervical spinal cord injury, attempts to write.
Okay, so this is pretty much BCI can do with invasive recording. So in the clinical applications, one key factor of BCI is the signal to noise ratio. So if you remember in the homework or lab 2 you've done individually previously, you compute the signal to noise ratio of ERP signals. So that's one way to compute the signal to noise ratio. Depending on what signal you are interested in, there's different ways to define your signal to noise ratio. But regardless the metric you use to compute, uh, we always need a, we always want a high signal to noise ratio to support the accuracy, uh, which is directly uh, influencing the efficiency and reliability of this PCI system. And the signal of interest varies among or within subjects. So that would be uh, that's due to the inter subject variability. So because we have the individual difference of our brain, and our brain work differently from day to day, so the BCI system has to be able to um, adapt to the individual difference or to the session to session variability. And most BCI systems require training and calibration for each individual. So, as we mentioned, your BCI system has to be able to adapt. So, almost impossible to have one system that applies to everyone. It always requires some training and some calibration. I believe you have experienced this when you did the laboratory one, when you try to use the alpha power ratio to control the moving of your vehicle, and you cannot, and you have to tune the threshold so that the vehicle will not move would not move too easily or too difficultly. And the PCI performance may change. It may lose when you transition from healthy users to disabled persons. If you develop your PCI based on healthy subjects, then it's uncertain if this system will work well on disabled persons. So that means you still need some calibration when you apply your well-developed system to another group that has some different conditions with the group that you have tested on. 好，那我们 BCI 发展上面有一些重要的问题。那首先呢，我们要怎么样打造一个很有效率，然后很可靠的 BCI？那我们就需要有高的 signal to noise ratio，很高的讯噪比。那讯噪比之前大家也在之前的作业有算过哦，那是 ERP 的讯噪比。那不同的情境下会有不同的讯噪比。那根据你需要的讯号是什么，那来去定义你的讯噪比。那高的讯噪比就反映出高的解读的正确率，那就可以带来高的效率跟高的可靠度。那我们的讯号呢，脑波讯号困难的地方就是它是来自生理的一个讯号，所以它有个体差异，然后还有随着时间这些差异。那你的模型就必须要有办法去适应这个个体的差异，或者是个体内随着时间的差异。那所以往往就需要一些额外的校正跟训练。那这训练就是在收集一些新的资料，去训练或者去微调你的 BCI 系统里面用到的这个解读的模型、辨识的模型。OK，那PCI performance maybe 就是当我们用一群，比如说我们的 BCI 的发展，我们是用正常的受试者去收集到脑波资料，去发展这样子的 BCI。那当我们要把它用到就是特殊情况的这些病人，比如说是那个残障的病人的时候，可能就会没有办法这么容易的直接套用。因为如果你是用在另一个群体，那这个群体跟你测试的群体有明显的不同的时候，你就要必须去处理这个变异性的问题。Okay, any questions so far? 穆婷。
I have no idea what the second point means.
The second point, the signal of interest varies among and within subjects. So, for example, when we use the alpha power ratio to control the vehicle, although we're using alpha power ratio, but the exact optimal alpha band varies across different subjects. Okay, if you remember, we use some 8 to 12 hertz bandpass filter to get the alpha subband signal, and then we estimate the power of that alpha band. But 8 to 12 is a range of frequency band. But the optimal alpha power varies across persons. Someone may have a 9 hertz dominate alpha power, and some might have 11 hertz dominated alpha oscillation. So if you want to improve the efficiency of the alpha controlled BCI, you must have to uh, deal with the individual differences. And it's not guaranteed that the 9 hertz alpha person will always have the strongest alpha oscillation in 9 hertz. It might varies from today to the next day. So this is about that the fact that the signal varies across subjects and also within subjects. Um, did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So yeah, so that example is about alpha power, and for more complicated control, for example, to control the P300 speller or some multimedia BCI, the signal varies more significantly than alpha power. OK，所以就是像我们我们用来控制 BCI 的讯号，比如说之前我们用 Alpha Power 去控制这些车子，那但是 Alpha Band 它从8到12赫兹，这是一个范围，那大部分人都落在这个范围，但是有些人他可能是比较偏9赫兹的震荡，它的 Alpha 的 Spindle 的波形，那或者是有人是偏11赫兹的震荡，所以如果我们要让就是这个 Alpha Control 这个 BCI 的效率更高的话，我们可能就要针对每一个人去了解他的 Alpha 波形长什么样子，然后去做一个对应的调整，才能再进一步增强它的效率。那所以这个用来控制 BCI 的这个 pattern，它其实是因人而异的，而且同一个人他也可能不会永远都是那样子的 pattern。比如说9赫兹的人，他可能今天9赫兹，他可能明天变9.5赫兹，这也是有可能的。所以，我们 BCI 常常要去处理这个差异性。OK，so okay, before we move on, show the let me show the final projects. Okay, it's not on the E3 yet. So the TAs, please post the final project description on E3. Meanwhile, I'll just open the document for you. Okay. So it's this one. Okay, so due to the pandemic, we will not have physical lecture till the end of this semester. So we have designed a final project that can be done remotely uh, for your group work. So this will be an extension of the Lab 3. Have uh, we will have this multimedia classification as the final project. So extended from Lab 3, um, you will not only using the model we provided to do the multimedia classification, we will ask you to implement a model from the literature and to compare with the 3 models uh, we provided as baselines. So here are the rules. Please read these rules carefully, uh, and So it's mostly about to submit your work on time and what you have to include in your submission. And here's a special point. Since we're gonna implement the models from literature, and there are some models that has uh, public uh, they have code available online, and there are also models that the author did not release the code. So we believe it's more difficult if you want to implement the model without the code released. So we will uh, give you extra credit for doing that if you can implement the model without the using the code available released by the authors. And there's a format penalty. If you did not follow the format, we will have penalty on that. And of course, plagiarism is strictly prohibited. So we trust that you can have some original work result from your work. And late submission penalty is due on June 3rd. Okay, so for the since since you have to find a model from the literature, we have set up some requirement or set up some criteria for you to choose the paper. The first, it has to be a paper that proposes a deep learning model for decoding EEG data. So if it's conventional machine learning, like filter bank common spatial pattern, we're not. So it's not in the radar for this final project. So we hope this is a deep learning model, and and one requirement that's very important is that they use the BCI competition 428 dataset. So this is exactly the dataset we use in Lab 3, the multi-majority dataset. There are other multi-majority dataset, but this one is the most common, and we hope you stick with this because that will give a objective comparison across models. So in the literature, please make sure that they use the BCI competition 428 dataset. And this paper has to be able to show a satisfactory classification performance based on cross-section validation. That is, the training and test data are strictly from different sessions. So this is important because if the training and test data are from the same sessions, the for EEG decoding, the validation might be biased to decoding the the data similarity rather than the real multi-major related pattern. So it's really important that in the paper they show the performance using cross-section validation. That is, the training and test data are strictly from different sessions. And there's an example of a paper that they use the multi-majority EEG data set and they develop a deep learning model and they perform some cross-section validation. So uh, let me Okay, so here you can see this is their paper. It's on archive, but it's okay. they have released the code. So if you implement this one, you will not get the 5 extra credit, but it might makes it easier for your work. So this is their model, and they apply their model on different data set, including the BCI 428 data set, and they show different cross validation. So here they test BCI 428 with tenfold cross validation. So this does not meet our requirement, but this one is the holdout test set. So this validation is what I mentioned, the cross session uh, performance, where the training and test data are strictly in different sessions. So they did show the performance on cross-section validation using the BCI 428 dataset. So this is a paper that qualifies for you to select. Okay. So you will implement this model and compare with other 3 models, which you have done in the lab 3. So you in the report you will submit the code uh, with the report, and this report will include introductions, and you will and and you will include these 3 models as baselines, and there will be you will have a section to describe the methods, and that will focus on your implementation, and you will introduce the architecture of the model, the training setting, the parameter determination. So since you're getting this model from literature, so I believe these information are all available in the paper you selected. And you will show the experiment uh, to validate the performance of the models. And we ask you to do individual training schemes. This can save you some time because you only need to train the model based on one single subject's data. But you need to repeat more than 10, no less than 10 times, uh, so that your performance is not biased to uh, a single randomization performance. And you will have to discuss on your results, and these are the points we suggest you to include, and you will make conclusion. So this is some data description about the BCI 428. Uh, that will be very useful when you apply this data. Any questions so far? Okay, so please post this on E3 and let me know if you have questions. All right, so I think we're moving into the break. So in the next section, we will continue to talk about the ethical issues of BCI, and we will have some breakout uh, time for each group to discuss. Okay, so see you after the break.